My talk is really about velocity as the master KPI. I think the term KPI is used so often that it's hard to understand what is actually a key performance indicator when it comes to business. Is it profitability? Is it growth rate? But my belief is that it's velocity as your master KPI, regardless of how you're looking at your business. So, to give you some background, I've been both a founder working inside from the top in, and then also working in operations from the inside out for an organization. And I've had the opportunity and the luck of working with a few high growth startups. The first one was WebCT. We were a learning management platform out of UBC in '99. And we grew to 60 million from about $3,000 in revenue a year to Vision Critical. I had a few stints in between, but to Vision Critical, I worked with Angus Reid and took his company from 10 million to 150 million in valuation before they split their pro services arm, and he exited with 70 million. And then most recently at Hootsuite, prior to, got them over the line from 80 million to about 110, 102-year strategy. So my experience has allowed me to see what happens inside a startup, high growth startup specifically, and what's required for it to maintain that velocity of growth, both from the human element as well as the organizational. And today, what I want to talk about is what that velocity actually means, which is about just getting it done. Especially in a startup, everything's about what you need to do and what you need to do because everything's immediate. Well, the reality is that doesn't change. And the larger a company gets, and the more it changes, that's when companies start to lose their competitive edge and their ability to actually innovate. You can't read this. Can you guys read this?
Cheaper, better, faster.
Yeah, cheaper, better, faster. Damn it. This is the same color font that's going to be on the rest of the slides, okay? Okay, so let's talk about what velocity means. Cheaper, better, faster. It would be great if everything was cheaper, better, and faster. But the reality is we usually have to pick. And I'll give an anecdote from a recent experience with my wife. She's very skeptical of technology. I have a Kickstarter graveyard in my home, and that has given her all kinds of anxiety when it comes to to tech. And when I first tried to convince her to use Instacart, in the last 2 years we've had 2 kids, almost 3 years, we've had 2 kids, so 2 under 3, it's a lot of work. And she came to me complaining one day saying that she's got all these things to do on her list. And I, looking at it from an operational standpoint, said, okay, well, let's figure out what those things are. And I realized that she was spending about 2 hours, 3 times a week going to the grocery store. I'm like, this seems ridiculous. You should outsource this. But it was more expensive. It wasn't cheaper. It wasn't better in her mind because she couldn't actually pick the fruit, like touch it and smell it and so on. I mean, I don't do that, but there are people who are aficionados of fruit, right? So she wanted to pick it, so it wasn't actually better, but it was faster. It was faster because she could just get on her phone, order it, and as my daughter calls it, the guy would come to the door, and she goes, is the guy here? Is he here with the groceries? So now she believes groceries comes because some guy knocks on the door. And it took her a while to get there because it wasn't better for her. But she was willing to make the sacrifice for time. Time was more important now because of the demands that she had were not just her own, but her family as well. So her worry was, is Frank here going to pick the right type of bananas? That's the user experience. That's not the better part. That's the part that she has to sacrifice for time. She pays more, she sacrifices the quality in terms of what she's expecting, but she gets time back. And her big thing was bananas. She's got this logic system where she says, you've got to get half the bananas green and half the bananas yellow. If not, all the bananas will go bad. So guess what? All the bananas kept going bad. And I introduced her to the capability of providing feedback in the app. And I explained to her about the concept of iterating to excellence, and eventually she got her bananas. She got her green bananas and her yellow bananas. Now she orders maybe 5 times a week, and some guy comes and drops off the groceries. So that's velocity. And velocity from the consumer's perspective is it comes down to how people see their time and whether they value their time. Time is the most valuable resource. It's the one that they're not making more of. They literally are not making more of. When you use it, it's gone. And when I worked in IT, time seemed a little bit flexible. People move, go live dates and those kind of things. I used to call immediate dates that could have moved as Olympic dates. It didn't matter if you were done or not, the Olympics were actually going to go off. So time is that resource that we all don't have a lot of. And that's why velocity matters. We are all impatient. We're all impatient humans. It matters so much to us that we can't wait an extra 2 seconds for a page to load and we'll just bounce off. Anyone here in e-commerce? Anyone here in e-commerce? One person? Anyone here that's an online SaaS application? Right, so you have to deal with an online experience. And what happens to your user experience when your system is slow? Goes down. People stop buying, they start spending less, they don't use your application. And what ends up happening is that you lost that sale. As an entrepreneur, as a business, you've lost that consumer. And why does it matter? Well, velocity doesn't always mean faster. It means that you get the velocity out of the things that you want so you can spend the time on the things that matter to you most. And for me, that's my family now. I mean, I would give up a lot of time before, but now I just want everything now. I don't want to wait tomorrow. I don't want to talk to you about it later. I want to just go from point A to point B. Actually, I don't even want to go from point A to point B. Just make it happen so I don't even have to know about it. Because every moment that I'm doing anything that I'm doing with your business to meet your protocol of how you do business is taking away from what matters to me most. So, you guys can still read this, right? That graphic actually means something. Anyways, revenue, it means revenue growth. When you have velocity in your business, you are serving the need of that consumer. And that consumer can then go back to what they focus most on. And when they choose to interact with your business, they want to, not because and it's not because they need to. So, by focusing on velocity, it's actually good for your business. It's more money. It's more money, and you're achieving your revenue growth potential because you are servicing that need for that consumer with velocity. And, okay, I'm going to read this as well. So, how do investors size you up? I use a lot of graphics with dollar signs just to make it clear that we're talking about money, and that's what investors care about. How is your company valued? It's based on, and usually 3 things, which is revenue, growth rate, and your profitability. And I kid you not, profitability is important. Even if you have a great growth rate, because as we've seen with WeWork recently, growth rate alone isn't sufficient. You got to show you got to make money. There was this LinkedIn post today with all the cannabis stocks, and it's a bloodbath. Because guess what? None of them are profitable. So you've got to focus on revenue growth and profitability for investors to care. They're going to invest in you because, frankly, to an investor, to a large degree, unless they care about your industry, they don't even really want to know your business. They just want to know, hey, do you have a market? Are you meeting the market? If I give you $1, can you make it $5? It's that simple. So And then every other metric they look at is derivative of that. Can you prove it? So you now have to figure out how you can satisfy these investors. You can build your revenue streams. You can drive growth, and basically go from a lawnmower to an F1 car. You're essentially building an engine in your business. It's a repeatable engine that scales. Something that you know that how it starts from point A and ends at point B at the end, and everything in between is as frictionless as possible. Because friction, again, means that you're not driving at velocity. You're not actually achieving that velocity that you need to service that business. So you're essentially building an engine that drives with velocity and achieves those outcomes that these consumers are looking for. And frankly, your staff as well, because no one really likes to do data entry. I took this quote, I don't know who said it, but basically there's nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. And that's where we sometimes get hung up in our engine. We start to put in systems and processes and bureaucracy in place and put things in place because we think those are the right things to do. But in fact, a lot of times, those are the things that you think you need to do or they're a legacy, but they don't actually service the need of that business. So, what I'm trying to get to here is that as you've identified that velocity is what you need and you're scaling and building your business and you're building this engine, you have to start becoming very, very careful that you are building the right pieces of that engine to win the race. You're not just building for the sake of building. A good example of that was I had an exec meeting with my leadership, and one of the directors was trying to explain his work that his team accomplished in that quarter, and he said, you know, the outcome was a process was implemented. My question was, well, why did we implement the process? Because it needed to. Okay. What's the success measure? How do you know it was successful? Well, it was implemented. So, okay, so we know that the process was great because it was done. That's usually the fallacy that most companies fall into. It's a lack of understanding of what is actually purposeful to scale and grow that company and achieve that velocity. And that comes to a set of rules that I've worked with various teams in defining, which are given in the acronym of LEAD, or the abbreviation of LEAD, which is to list things that you're doing by high value and low value. Figuring out which ones in your low value you eliminate first as a first step. And if you can't eliminate it, you look to automate it. And if you can't automate that necessary step, you finally look at delegating. And that's part of a process of how I've worked with various executive teams and also with the folks in my organizations and the portfolio companies I work with in terms of identifying what is it that they actually need to accelerate. What do they need to build velocity in? And it comes down to that human and what they're doing. So if you're a founder and you've got a small company, you're wearing every single functional hat in that organization. Eventually, you start looking at delegating or putting in systems to implement and start to look at data points. Without an exercise like this at each level, you may start going down the path of automating the wrong things or delegating the wrong things or just doing the things that you don't need to do. So how does a high value and low value list work? Well, it comes down to a personal level. Something's high value is if you're evolving, you're learning, you're developing, it's actually beneficial, you're dealing with a human. As in, if everyone in your organization was only focused on interacting with humans all day, that's the right organization that you put together. If you're interacting with the system, that's a low value effort. You should try to automate it. or eliminate it. Which is a lot of what I've seen in a lot of organizations. Business process, bureaucracy, reports. There was a team, when I first started at Vision Critical, there was a team of 4 people generating reports that nobody looked at. It was a great spend. It was about $200,000 of headcount a year and a bunch of management for reports that nobody literally looked at. And that's a symptom of scale, even at that level of organization, but it also happens in startups, where if you start to lose focus on that customer and what that customer needs in the velocity, you start to put a lot of these kind of systems in place. And when it comes to automation, again, it's really the human element. It's what your humans in your organization are doing and how they're interacting with your audience, which is your customers. What you automate is everything that person is doing that is not engaged with the customer, not directly in relationship or connected to that customer. That's an easy way to look at what you should automate. And ultimately, when all else fails, you start to look for a human to do that work. And by the way, it's not about looking at that human to do the work. It's about getting that human to do work where they can expand their creativity. And they can actually drive and provide concepts to the action rather than rote activities. And that's where you start to look at delegation, because that means you've got a human that you can help to evolve and grow. And ultimately, that person and everyone else who starts to think that way from your leadership down will start to define your organizational culture. So a startup is a startup for many reasons. One is you haven't defined your business engine, or you're defining your business engine and evolving it as you grow. But to a large degree, you're defining a human engine as well, which is the cultural aspect of your organization. If you can define a method of organizational work definition that's prioritized around the human interaction of that organization, you have a higher chance of scale than you do if you focused on just process and systems. And eventually you'll get the right people on the bus. They'll all be focused on where you're headed because it's clear around the customer experience. And you can start to focus on what's critical for your business, which is about finding customers, getting them to buy, getting them to spend more, and tell their friends. And I would like to close by saying, when it comes to scale, it comes down to having the right business engine that services that need for that business to generate value and velocity for the customer, and building the right human engine that focuses the humans on driving that engine at the highest velocity so that you get the outcome that you want. Thank you.